Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Elise and today we are going to do a spooky craft. Not surprising at all. It is October and it is the month in which that is pretty much all I do. Today's project is going to be sort of a one-day build a la Adam Savage. It's something I've always wanted to do just because I don't always have time to do a project that takes 2 weeks. Or a week or whatever. Sometimes I just want to get something done in a day, you know? That's all I want. So today I'm going to be making a leather desk mat. So a desk mat is just a leather mat or, you know, some other material that you put on top of your desk to protect the surface when you are writing. So I haven't really done a whole lot of leatherworking. Pretty much the extent of it was my Skyrim book right there. So I know how to do some basic tooling stuff, but I am not a pro when it comes to the dyeing. So come along with me and we're gonna mess with some leather. So these are the materials and tools I'm going to be using today. So this is my design. This is a not to scale model. It's going to be 14 by 20, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tool channels around the edges, and then I'm going to put in, and actually I'm going to use this design up here in the corner on the top right corner and the bottom left. I'm going to tool in this really cool spiderweb design, and then I'm going to stain the entire thing this dark green, and I'm going to use this pewter acrylic paint in all of the tooled channels to give it a little bit of sparkle, and that's pretty much it. Pretty basic, it's not anything overly complex, but I think it'll turn out really cool. So I've got my dyeing sponge that I made, I've got my dye, I've got my paint, I have my various tools, I've got a groover, scratch awl, and my giant scary scissors. And of course can't forget the veg tan 5 to 6 ounce leather. My first step was to measure and then mark with a scratch awl the piece of leather that I was going to cut. Started out with cutting it with my leather shears, but it made my hand cramp up, so I switched to a utility knife, which cut through it basically like butter. After that, I rounded off the corner so I don't have any sharp pieces. After that, I set my groover to, I believe it was about a 1/2 inch. I grooved around the entire edge of the piece of leather, creating a 90-degree angle with the edges of that so it did not follow the rounded edge. I went over this twice because it wasn't quite deep enough on the first go around. Next up was to mark where my spider webs are going to go. I put these in the top right and bottom left corners because I didn't want the webs on all 4 corners because I didn't want to decrease the working area of the mat too much. Each tine or maybe spoke of the web was 2 inches long, and then I used a empty thread spool to create the arcs of the web. I used a scratch awl to mark all of these lines and curves, and then when I was ready to be tooled, I wetted the leather with a spray bottle, and then I used my stylus tool to mark the first go around, and then after that I used my swivel knife to go over it one more time. Once I had all of the actual tooling done, it was time to burnish the edges. So I burnished my edges with water. If I were using something else, like a type of gum or something, then I would want to burnish them after dyeing. But because I'm just using water, I'm just going to dye them after I burnish them. Now, I don't know if this was like the best way to do this, but it worked out fine in this case. So maybe don't listen to me on this part. This is one of my first just leather projects. This is definitely not a tutorial. After I was done burnishing the edges, I brushed off the surface of the mat because it was time to dye it. Something I didn't do last time when I was making my Skyrim book was I did not know that you should wet the leather when you're dyeing because it makes all of the fibers align and take the dye better. I think I'll probably be trying to get an airbrush for this just because I want that really even finish, and I actually had to apply the dye twice to get even sort of a good finish on this. It's definitely something I need to work on, definitely something that I'm not great at the moment. So I started this project at about 10 p.m. So I know I said one day build, technically it's going to be an evening and a little bit of the next day. So I worked on it for about 2 hours for the night that I started filming this, and then I spent about maybe an hour working on it the next day. Okay, so this is it so far. The color's a little bit uneven, but I actually kind of like it. It makes it look a little older and a little bit like haunted mansion-y. I guess this would be a suitable desk pad for the haunted mansion. So I'm gonna let this dry overnight, and I'm going to finish it up with the acrylic paint in the morning and the spider webs in the corners. And then it'll be done and ready to use. So on the second day, I went ahead and I used a toothpick, as I was saying before, to add my pewter acrylic paint to the tooled parts of the spider webs. I decided not to put the paint into the grooves around the edges of the mat, just because I honestly felt like it was going to be a bit much, and I'm really glad I didn't do that. So once I let this paint dry and made sure that I liked how the whole thing looked, it was time to use it. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. It was a really fun and fast project, which is not a bad thing, just because I frequently do really long ones. So I hope you enjoyed watching me play with some leather, and I'm sure I will probably be doing more of that in the future. So stay tuned for more of that, and I've got another sewing project headed your way, hopefully next week, hopefully in time for Halloween. So I will see you next time.